occurrence of the monthly charge. They may get a bounty, there may be a coupon, there may be a cross-sell. There's a bunch of different ways to play this. Membership sites are what we classically think of as porn sites. Affiliate networks are large networks where you essentially sign up for one account that gives you access to a large variety of sites. Even though each site may only have a dozen pictures, you have access to 100 of these sites. Traffic brokers, as I mentioned, this is typically with dealing with search engines and other industries like, say, the mobile space. Member area ads are really interesting. The most valuable ads in this industry are actually member area ads. And what this means is that it's a customer that's already on an adult site, or it's already a porn site, they've already logged in, and this is a win-win because, one, they like adult content, and two, they already have a working credit card. Revenue share, this gets really tricky, and I'm not an MBA, so I won't attempt to explain that. Cross-sells, exit coupons, all sorts of things. It gets pretty incestuous. Visually, I think it's really good to see some examples of this. So membership sites, typically we think of things in a couple different varieties. So niche content would be something like Suicide Girls or Kink.com. Networks, Top Bucks, Pride Bucks, Silvercash, Pussycash, there's a bunch of different affiliate networks. Video on demand sites, so this would be kind of the online version of the experience you'd have like in a hotel room where you can pick and choose what you want to watch. So these are where you'd be paying essentially per a minute. Really interesting, kind of in the middle here, is the review sites or the TGB sites. These are kind of this weird kind of anomaly that's happened in the industry. Back in the day we had sites like Persian Kitty and things that would list kind of password sites. Well, these have kind of morphed into kind of a Tom's Hardware guide of porn. And so what they actually do is review porn sites and give it a rating based upon, do they have DRM, how fast are their servers, do they have a variety of content, how fast is their customer support, respond to emails, that sort of thing. The traffic brokers I talked about, Wildline and Traffic Dude, are fairly large in the industry. There's a lot of different press. Certainly you've heard of AVN, the large conference in Las Vegas, ASCAP, XBiz, Free Speech Coalition, Why Not as a forum. A lot of different organizations here, particularly in the event space. Like I said, literally events happen every 2 to 3 weeks. I'm not making that up. Also, billing is very important. In the U.S., the largest billers are Paycom or Epic and CC Bill. This is about the right speed? Faster? Slower? Anyone out there? Okay, I don't know if anyone's actually out there, so let me throw some swag. Let's try that again. Okay, now you're waking up. So my day job, VideoBox. So the business has been around 4 years. It's fairly small. We've got about 30 employees. Out of everyone that works for the company, there's only 3 that have actually worked in adult prior to this job. So it's full of MBAs and dot-commers and enterprise folks. So it's truly a technical company. On the technology side, it's a Java backend that powers the site. And we've got a little bit of mix of C and Perl and PHP, all kinds of goodies, of course. AS36472, so fairly new when it comes to the multi-homing space. And why do we think our model is unique or different? And this is not a sales pitch, but essentially this is how we think we're slightly different than ye old porn site and why it's interesting to geeks, besides the fact that it's not DRM and we don't do bandwidth limiting and that sort of stuff. Essentially we're not evil in the porn space. But one of our big claim to fame is adding 5 DVDs a day. And so when we look at these different sites here that exist for the membership sites, VOD sites are really popular. The problem with VOD sites is they've got about anywhere from 50,000 to 80,000 DVDs. That's a lot of content to go through. And so we kind of looked at that and said, well, we don't want to be a Suicide Girls or a Kink.com because you're building a brand, and establishing a brand takes a long time. And a network is kind of, there's not really anything exciting there. So how can we get something kind of in the middle where it can be a flat rate but you're still getting some new value or access to new content? And so what we do is we add 5 DVDs a day on our straight site or our main site, and then 1 on our gay site. So there's always fresh content to pick from. Besides all the marketing crap, I think what's really interesting is that we really pride ourselves on the technical side, and you'll see that in the slides coming forward. We care about metadata. We care about the quality of the video. We care about how fast the video downloads. We care about the codecs that we make available. We are essentially geeks that just happen to be working in porn. So as I said, what we do is license content directly from studios or distributors. This gets a little bit tricky. Content gets recycled quite a bit, so it's very frustrating. You buy content from Studio X, and then Studio Y gives you half of the exact same content you just bought, but the DVD box cover is different. Sometimes actually customers will point this out to us because we didn't catch it internally. Very frustrating when that happens. Definitely some competitors in our space, Video Z, DVD Box, taking directly from our name. The VOD sites are also kind of indirect competitors. Hot Movies and ABN are approximately about $200 to $250 million a year companies, fairly large organizations, very well established. In the context of this space, small on the network side is basically less than about 10 gigabits a second and peak capacity that's being utilized. So some of the names you might be familiar with are GFY. This is a popular forum that means go fuck yourself. And Sex Tracker is also fairly popular. These are run by hosting companies. There's a few other hosting companies that actually specialize, particularly in the adult space. CWIE or Cave Creek is a good example of that. What's interesting to note is that these guys have been doing anywhere from about 5 to 50 gigabits for years. This was prior to the phenomena of YouTube and that sort of thing. And to this day, they're starting to catch up pretty quick to the mainstream. It's really interesting how fast they're growing. So here's a screenshot of what the site looks like. This seems very marketing-like, so I'll make it under like 5 seconds here. Here's the cover, here's the metadata you can click on, here's a sample clip, here's some recommended junk. The thing that we're known for is what's called internally the film strip, but for this crowd we'll call it the pick and wank. Now the way this works is that we provide a thumbnail view. This is about every 10 seconds, and you can basically drag an image over and say, okay, I want to start the movie here, and I want to end the movie here, and then click. So now what you're going to appreciate, now what you're really going to appreciate, the true AV geeks in the house are really going to appreciate about this is this is not like real video SMIL where you're downloading the entire file and you're seeking ahead. We actually dynamically generate the table of contents, the header of the file. So you're only really downloading the bits that you're interested in. So really nice stuff there. This is a standard Windows Media 8 file, so it works fine in VLC, MPlayer, all that sort of good stuff. By the way, there's no actual Windows machines utilized in the production environment. It's just the codec that was selected about 4 years ago, prior to my involvement in the company. So what are the features that we have today that make us kind of different or unique? Lucene-powered search. This is a pretty standard open source search engine that most folks use. So you can do Boolean style searches. I'm looking for this particular star, this series, this category. Click, 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 and then you get the results. Pretty nice thing there. So metadata that's actually useful. User comments per each DVD. This is pretty exciting. We're kind of experimenting and putting our toes in the water of the Web 2.0 space. Not allowing people to create profiles and karma ratings and that sort of thing, but allowing users to give a 1 out of 5 rating and to also leave comments for each chapter of a DVD. We also have a recommendation engine. The best analogy here is something like Amazon.com. So you've been watching these seconds. Other people that watch these seconds also like those seconds. You might want to check them out. Works really well. To be Privacy 2.0 compliant, we also allow an opt-out feature for this. So if you don't want us to remember what you're watching, we won't do that for you. But if you do, you can log back in and say, oh yeah, that was that DVD I was watching out of the library that we have. What are some of the features that we're adding in the future to kind of bring us up to what I'd say essentially kind of the porn 2.0 space? H.264 is pretty much drop dead obvious. That's where we have to go. We recently launched a Flash player. Fairly happy with that. The Flash player allows the same interface where you're presented with a film strip and you can seek ahead and start in a particular area. Right now, its basic functionality is a looping function. So essentially pretend it's like a video editor. You scroll ahead, you find something you're interested in, select it, you just keep playing it over and over again. To make that, again, Web 2.0 compliant, we need to add tagging and mashup support. And again, that's something new to this industry, so getting licensing deals with studios has been very difficult. They have no idea what a mashup is. Pretty difficult stuff. Internationalization, so pretty obvious here: Spanish, German, French, Japanese, Chinese. We will only be translating the actual navigation of the site and the metadata, not actually the user comments that each user posts, and some other neat stuff that I really can't share right now. Now you may be asking, well, where's kind of the tech, the exciting part about this, the boring marketing crap he's talking about? Well, how do we get all this content there? So our straight site has about 3,500 DVDs. Like I said, we had 5 DVDs a day. So originally what we were doing is essentially we had some Dell desktop PCs and we're just popping the DVDs in and clicking buttons, and not very efficient. The next step of that was, well, we'll just outsource that. We'll find some people, and you know, they've got a bunch of machines at home, and they can just rip these things through and bring back a big USB hard drive to the office. And then that worked pretty well too. But when we wanted to add flash, we're like, well, if we use that procedure, it will take a half a year to encode this. So we have to industrialize this or automate this procedure. And so the outcome of that is pretty exciting. What we have here is a DVD jukebox. And so what these are geared for is like universities or libraries. And so typically they're geared for slightly more mainstream content, say like National Geographics or encyclopedias, that sort of thing. We're using it for porn instead. Now what's nice about this, again for the geek crowd, is that this is a SCSI device, so it's basically a tape changer. So the actual robot is just an additional SCSI ID on the bus. So you just grab a DVD, pop it in the drive, rip it, and grab another one and keep going through. You can bulk load approximately about 400 DVDs. In the configuration that we have, we put 200 DVDs in there. And then we just bought a bunch of cheap desktops. So these are about $800 machines. A couple machines that kind of keep a cache of the VOB files that we're ripping. And the process is pretty well automated. So we rip the VOBs, we encode them using mencoder and FFmpeg and all that good stuff. Add the metadata, and then we rsync it to the COLA. We're trying to automate this process and make it as geeky as we can, and it's really frustrating. The metadata that the studios provide is usually completely useless. The name gets cut off, even though you got Twidlet, the midget is squirting. You don't know what number it is or what series it is. In this case, you don't know the title and the provider ID were swapped, and generally the case we get is the data is null. In most cases, studios aren't actually burning the DVDs themselves. They have a third party burning it. So again, we can't trust the metadata that they provide, so we have to do it ourselves. On the storage side, this is kind of interesting. You know, being kind of tech guys and porn guys, we have the mashup of trying to be kind of cool and be cheap and find somewhere in the middle. And so we decided not to hand all of our money to NetApp or EMC and that sort of thing. Kind of found a kind of a middle ground solution that's not just yield SATA drives in a big box, and something a little bit better than that. This is a really interesting product. This is called the SATA Beast, and what's really amusing about it is in 4U, you get 35 terabytes usable. And this is RAID 5 with some global spares in it. And a lot of people ask me, oh, well, that must be the hottest thing, and it must be really inefficient. This is actually the coldest thing that we have in our colo. It's a really efficient design. We've got about 6 of these. I wanted to bring one out here, but it was just way too much. So some geek porn here. We have just a bunch of Dell servers. Don't want to go too much detail in the architecture. They may think that that's too proprietary, but essentially you have kind of a caching level, so a bunch of squid servers essentially. We have well over 50 servers that's all they do is cache. You also want to note one thing here. The LEDs that indicate if the drive is powered or it's being accessed are solid. They're always solid, all the time. They never blink. The other thing to note for the network geeks is that this is a standard 6509, but those are 10 gigabit links, and there's 2 there, and that's actually an old picture. There's now 4. Geek porn, you know. Oh, let's move a little bit fast here. Let's see here. So you're asking, well, why is he showing a network diagram? Well, this is pretty obvious if you look at route tables and looking glasses and that sort of thing. You could kind of figure out how our network is combined. What's interesting to note is for our network, we only have 3 or 4 websites. We're not a hosting company. Like I said in the beginning about the business side, it's our own brand, our own business, our own technology. So for this particular AS, there's only 3 websites behind it. And I wanted to show how we have kind of a mix of both kind of classic US tier 1s and also some networks that are pretty prevalent in the European area, and why we have that mix. One of the things that's very frustrating is the customer experience that a user is having. For this particular content, they want it to download fast and snappy, and more so they want the quality to be good and the metadata to be accurate. So this is not like YouTube, it's much more challenging for that. So I wanted to find out, well, how do we monitor the speed that people are getting? Do we have them download some special applet, or do we just have them do a speed test, or do we just do some sort of reporting, that sort of thing? How do we get this data? Well, typically what network engineers will do is some sort of kind of analysis, either in the form of NetFlow or SFlow. As our network as a Cisco shop, NetFlow was really our only option, and so we weren't able to use SFlow, and there's some really nice tools out there for SFlow. So we kind of figured out, well, how can we get some sort of alternative where we can measure the customer experience that we're getting? Most of these open